Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Mining Media, where it's okay to do one more episode and stay up late, or say one more fight and stay up late playing a video game, or one more chapter and stay up late reading a book, because all of those things are just giving you fuel for better TTRPG experiences. And speaking of staying up late to play a video game, I have not been somebody to do that in a very long time, but I need to talk to you all about a video game this week for Mining Media, and we're going to talk about what I've been told is a Game of the Year contender, and I can totally see why. We're talking about Clair Obscur Expedition 33. Now, a little bit of background for Clair Obscur Expedition 33, which I'm just going to be calling Expedition 33 for the rest of this episode. It is made by a group of game designers and developers that I think split off from like a big company and decided to make this thing their own thing. And, you know, for being a smaller team with the chops of big studio experience and things like that, it was still kind of a surprise that such a small team without big studio backing made such an incredible game, and it is an incredible game. I'm really going to try hard not to spoil anything about Expedition 33, because I think that if you have the chance to play it, you totally should. It's not a super long game as far as like RPGs go for video games. You know, a lot of them can be like 80-hour games. You can play this game that long. There's a lot of side content, but you can also probably finish this in, I'd say, 35, 40 feels right. And a quick overview of the basics that you would get. And again, I do not want to get into spoilers because this is a game that benefits you so much to go in almost knowing nothing at all, okay? And I don't want to say anything crazy, but the general premise is that you are a team of explorers going to a location that many other groups of explorers before you have gone to attempt to take down something that is causing everyone in their city to die by the age of 33. And yeah, it's pretty terrifying and terrible. So this game just kind of drops you in it. You have almost no knowledge whatsoever of what is going on, but you quickly learn that there's a lot to learn, and you're not always getting it from reliable sources. It's great. Okay, so let's do the Mining Media thing. First off, just go get the game and play it so we can talk about it. The first question we always ask with Mining Media is what TTRPGs could emulate Expedition 33 well at a table? I think I'm more confident in saying this than I have for any other thing that I've covered in Mining Media, and saying that nothing. There are games that could go for it, but it would have to be very different, and you'll hear why in a few minutes. But mechanically, anything with asymmetric design, right? So Slayers or Dragon Slayers, the new fantasy Heartbreaker version of it by Gila RPG's Spencer Campbell. You guys know I'm a big Spencer Campbell fan. So one of his games, Slayers, is built where every class has different sort of mechanics to engage with the game in a different way, right? The goal is always the same. It is to slay these monsters, but each class does it differently. The gunslinger has a 6-sided die that does whatever. You know, the warrior and the rogue want to do different things with their dice. So it's clever, right? You need a different way for each character to engage with whatever the crux resolution mechanic of the game you're doing. Similarly, Die RPG, which is the game based off Kieran Gillen's Die graphic novel series. There's a great Die actual play on the Roll to Cast podcast feed, which I recommend listening to. It was a very good run of that game. But basically in that one, it's a bunch of people getting together after a long time, having played games when they were young, and then you kind of get iseki'd into the game world that you played in when you were like preteens or teenagers. There's a reason that's sort of relevant to Expedition 33. And other than that, I think narratively or vibes-wise, I think there's a Dishonored TTRPG, and that sort of feels the same, right? There's some kind of weird magic and technology sort of thing going on in this world. The vibes of Expedition 33 are so wild that, again, I don't think it could really be replicated by any existing system. It's very artistic and like surrealist, and for obvious reasons, it feels like a painting or unfinished kind of artwork. And the enemy that you go up against, her name is the Paintress. So it's very artsy. It's French coded, right? Like everything is very French in its feeling. I'm pretty sure they were French designers, like the company, the people making it were French. So it, instead of being like a JRPG with a lot of Japanese overtones and, styles of setting and things like that, it's very French. It's kind of interesting. It's very cool. So what games could do it well? Unfortunately, I don't have a great answer for you there. But if you want to try and emulate it, if you know of one and you've played the game, or you play the game and you come back later and say, Rainey, how could you not have thought of this game? Let me know, because it's probably pretty interesting. But the bigger question here is, what from Expedition 33 is gamifiable, or what should you take from it to bring to the table? Asymmetric design is my number one answer, right? I don't know if this is necessarily doable if you're already playing in a game, but I think most TTRPGs could handle this at this point. There was a great email that came out on the emailing list for Skeleton Code Machine. I don't know how to pronounce this word. Exunt Press. They are a pretty big company as far as, I think they're an OSR publisher for TTRPGs, but they had an email, let me pull it up, back in June about asymmetry versus variable player powers. And it makes a very good point that what I'm discussing here is not technically asymmetry, because asymmetry would be every character actually has a different way of winning the game, or, goals to achieve in addition to mechanics, versus variable player powers. You're still actively going for the same goal, but you're doing it in different ways. So this is variable player powers, but if you can find a way to do that in your game and make everybody feel like if they choose a different class the next time they play, it feels significantly different. If you want to argue that you think D&D 5e does this with classes, you're wrong, because you're still rolling a d20 and adding a number and you're doing this thing. Just because you have different abilities doesn't mean the game feels different as you play it. I'm talking significant differences. In Expedition 33, one of your characters has different stances that she enters based on moves that she does. Another one of them is like your mage character, your wizard character, and she casts spells which give her remnants. They're called stains, and then depending on what stains she has in reserve, other spells function differently or get more powerful. Another one of your characters only learns new abilities by beating certain enemies, and then they can use those creatures' powers against other enemies that you face later. Everybody has a different total system. One of the characters has Foretell and Moon and Twilight phases, and honestly I still don't know how CL works, but somehow she pumps out stupid damage for me, so I just kind of roll with the same thing that works. But that kind of feeling at a table, I feel like would be really rewarding for everyone to understand how they are unique in providing a certain thing for either the group, or getting an expectation, getting an experience that matches their expectation and their enjoyment of a game specifically for them at a table where everyone else is also engaging with the game in a way that matches their style or expectations is really, really cool. That's obviously not easily replicated at a table, so, grain of salt and all that, but it could be something that the GM could reinforce. If you're typically a player, maybe be cognizant of who your character is becoming, what they're striving for, why they act the way they do. All of these can be used to contextualize the abilities that you're getting from advancement, mechanical choices that you're making, but they could inspire homebrew or reflavoring of those things to make the game more personally satisfying, and work with your GM to make that happen. Another thing about characters in this game is, and I say this all the time, it's not fun to play a character who's not flawed, but this game really is great, because as you learn more about each of the characters in this game, it only makes things more emotionally devastating when you learn what is happening and what they actually have to do. So at a table, again, I imagine most people listening to my show are probably GMs, or GM's golden player pet kind of people, right? Like the person who comes and goes hey, I will bite that hook really hard and get my character in trouble, trusting that I'm doing what you want us to do, so let's have fun with it. But this is a good player and GM practice, right? If you're a player, you're making a character and you want them to have some kind of arc. You see them growing in some kind of way from start to finish. And you might not know what that looks like, but when you build a character with a goal, maybe think about the baggage that led to that goal. And for GMs, maybe start asking your players how their PCs feel about certain things at the beginning of sessions or like at the beginning of arcs or something like that, just for no reason. You know, do that scary GM thing where it just goes like, hey, just wondering, like, what does your character think happens after you die? You know? And then implement something tangential or even directly related to that question throughout the next few sessions and challenge their beliefs on that thing, or ask them to tackle a hard question about the way they feel about a thing. Because a big part of Expedition 33, no spoilers, is that everyone is doing something their own way, and that doesn't make it wrong, but to impose your way, I'm getting ahead of myself. We will get there. Flawed characters are great to bring to a table, and as GMs, give your players an opportunity to work on those flaws, work out those flaws, or give into those flaws and sink even lower to make coming back from it that much better. Now, to that end, if you are the GM thinking of these questions to challenge your characters on ways they feel about things or flaws about their character and using those in their personal character arcs, let's talk about theme. Expedition 33 is such a theme-heavy game, and it is not subtle about it. It is confusing about it, but as you start to learn what's going on, it's right there the whole time, and you have to think about what that means as you're moving towards the end of the game. I recently read a book called Invisible Ink by Brian McDonald, and it's basically a book about writing better stories. And one of the lessons in that book is that good writers aren't afraid to let the audience know what they're trying to say with their story and letting it be obvious, because if it's well written, it won't feel ham-fisted or shoved down your throat. It'll feel right, because obviously that's what this story is exploring. This game does this better than most media I've ever dove deep into. It's very good at slowly revealing what you are really grappling with through this story and then breaking you with it. And it's great. Obviously, this is hard advice to implement into a TTRPG, but I think that a lot of GMs love the big reveal idea, love the twist, the ooh, gotcha, but I think you'll actually find that you can have better experiences if your characters know ahead of time what kind of thing you're trying to have them experience at the table. Again, this is for GM, like my style of GMing is collaboration, right? So I ask the players, like, what does this mean for your character? How does your character feel about this? And then I tune future things towards pushing that character towards the uncomfortable. But for other GMs, if you're playing a more traditional game and you know where your campaign is heading, maybe do less gotchas and more, you know you're going to have to deal with this at some point. How is your character working up the courage or preparing themselves to address this, to confront this, right? And if they try and do it right away, they're not ready. If they wait, when's the right time? When are you prepared enough? When can you do this? And a great way to pace this and let them work towards it, but not get right to it and kind of cut out a lot of tension and dramatic buildup, or string them along forever, is something that this game does really well, which is that the characters in the game don't know the whole story. They're going to a place that is unknown to them, that has been explored by other expedition groups before them, but they only have limited knowledge about what they're going to encounter and how they're going to go about this. And over the course of the game, you're going to find records, diaries of previous expeditions, and they're going to give you little bits of information from the point of view of one of the people on that expedition. You're going to get a very short little blurb about what they were dealing with when you're at a specific location, and it's going to give you a little hint about what you might be encountering or a glimpse into the bigger picture. It is slow drip context in a game where you are otherwise effectively completely in the dark. And that's a great way to run TTRPGs. And let me tell you right now, again, personal experience, your mileage may vary, but I love being a GM who has an idea, like really broad strokes, really not defined details, but saying, I was feeling it was going this way. When you learn this information, what do you think could make this even juicier? And I ask my players because that lets them insert something that their character would care about or would drive them crazy or make them need to go do this or make them dread doing this, and it ties it to their character. Now, obviously, I could do that work as the GM, and typically I do try and say, like, I think that this has something to do with your character. But in a game like this, in Expedition 33, you learn these little things and you start to realize who it's affecting and why, and whose backstory that you're slowly also uncovering through camp scenes and stuff like that it resonates with or mirrors or challenges. It's so good. Okay, couple other things about Expedition 33 that I think could make for good fuel for your TTRPG campaigns. Are you guys ready for this one? This is a big one. You see Reddit threads or discourse and discussion about this all the time, I feel like. But Expedition 33 is a game where I feel like there almost isn't a villain, which sounds crazy, but hear me out. And I can't give spoilers, okay? You are going to meet people who are clearly antagonists to your characters, to the party, to the expedition. However, by the time you learn what's going on in this game, they are perfect examples of things are never black and white. There's always gray. And not only that, there's a very popular saying that any good villain thinks they're the hero of the story, and their goals or, their perspective should be justified to them to make it believable, so that way it's not just like pure ridiculous villainy, right? And then that way it's a more compelling villain. I would not call anyone in Expedition 33 a villain. I think that when you learn what they are doing and how they are approaching things, that you could justify these people's stances and takes. Now, that is not to say that I agree with some of the characters and how they go about it, and this is a very important thing. I started talking about this earlier. Things that characters do, what they represent, is subjective. And you can feel like you're doing something the right way. And if that helps you get through it and you're not hurting anyone else, then, probably all good. I don't want to make a blanket statement there because that could be misconstrued a lot of ways. If you impose your way of doing things on someone else, that is not good, okay? It might benefit them to give them, say, something like, hey, this helped me. But also, like, forcing someone's hand in certain situations, not cool, right? It doesn't make their reasoning wrong. It's really hard to talk about. It's really hard to talk about this in context for the game without giving spoilers, but play the game, hear me out on this one. I think that you could do really well with making a compelling antagonist for your campaign based on Renoir. And that's all I'll say. And the last thing that I'm going to say about Expedition 33 that I think that you should consider for your TTRPG campaigns is everyone's a human, except for Monoco, who is the best, by the way. I will not hear any arguments otherwise because Monoco is the best. I've never wanted to cosplay really in my life, but if I ever do, I'm making a sweet Monoco cosplay. But where I'm actually going with this is the cast of Expedition 33 are all humans, and then there are these strange beings known as Gestrels. And they are quite strange. They are friendly, but they are like battle obsessed and competitive to a fault. They are like crazy about testing themselves against people, and they want to fight, and they're traitors, and there's little ones, and basically, without getting into too much, Gestrels basically, if one dies, they come back, but they lose the memories of their previous life, right? It's really sad. It's a really interesting non-human race in a game that just adds a layer of interesting theme-related topics, right? What the Gestrels go through is an interesting parallel to something that the story is exploring, right? And they're just a really interesting, like, they weren't just like an anthropomorphic animal race, right? They are something unique, and they are something that has something to say about the theme of the game, and that's why they're important. And I guess my only point on this is that, I'm really getting sick of seeing new TTRPGs on Kickstarter and all this stuff, and it's like, look at all these races you can play, and it's just basically like humanoid form animals or something. And like, don't get me wrong, I love animals, and I have made a whole 5e campaign in the past where like I was like, here's a bunch of fun, weird animal hybrid people, because I played Magic the Gathering, and I was like, Loxodon are cool, and whatever. But I think it's more interesting when they're more relevant to the story. Alright, and I think that's about it. I could say a lot more about this game. If you want to talk about this game, please do message me to talk about it. Join the DMs After Dark Discord, where we can talk about it, because this game rules, and I need more people to talk to it about. I wish I could go more into how each character's combat abilities are so unique and interesting, but talking about it right now doesn't really do us any favors, because there's no TTRPG that replicates that level of granularity between characters. But someone should consider it, maybe? I don't know, it might be too much. Anyway, no outro spiel this time. Say hi, email me at rainyplaysgamespod@gmail.com. And happy fall, everyone. Finally.